Welcome into the Fantasy Sanctuary Best Ball Show for a very, very special show. Not only do we have Rich joining us tonight, we've dragged him into the best ball streets for his first Draftkings draft of the year. We're going to talk strategy. We're going to talk from basic stuff all the way through to some more advanced theory. We're going to get into a draft, and we'll keep taking your questions as we go. But today is the day that me and Rich have been working towards since way back in October when we first started talking about this project, and in January 10th when we launched for Fantasy Sanctuary. Less than 6 months later, here we are, 1,000 subscribers. Couldn't be there without all the amazing people who've been checking us out, who've been joining us, all the great guests, all the people on Twitter, all the people in the Dynasty Island Patreon who've been there, all the people in our fantasy leagues who've shared our work, subscribed, who've done everything they possibly could to support us. We won't go on about it for too long, but Rich, anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, you've said it all. I think we started this and we wanted to, hopefully hit 1,000 by the start of the season. And the fact that we've done it and it's June is incredible. We've been completely, I think I speak for both of us, blown away in terms of the response that everybody's given us since we launched, whether that be, as you say, on Twitter and on the Discord, in Patreon, all that kind of stuff, just in leagues, just people I've shared stuff with that I'm playing in leagues with for years that didn't know that I produce content. So yeah, genuinely blown away. It's been so much fun doing this with yourself, and we've had some amazing guests. We've got some amazing guests still coming. And yeah, thank you very much for getting us to this point. It's not a case of hit 1,000 and foot off the gas. We've got plenty more stuff coming. We've got some really exciting plans for the next couple of months and then into the season. So yeah, hopefully we will be able to say thank you for supporting us so far by continuing to deliver and hopefully continuing to produce some good and useful content for you all.
100%. And we've got so many great people in the chat with us tonight watching along, some of the real key people who've been there. So we really do appreciate you. So like I said at the top, we're going to talk a bit best ball strategy. We're going to talk about the very basics. If you are new to best ball, if you've only ever played maybe 1 or 2 leagues, or if you've even done 100, we're going to talk about some of that basic stuff, and we're going to get to the more advanced stuff as we go. So Rich, in terms of your experience with best ball, what kind of experience have you had over the last few years playing best ball? I know I've dragged you into a few leagues.
I think the official term is I've dabbled. I've never really fully got invested. I think I'm an all or nothing kind of person. I sort of don't do things by halves, and yeah, maybe best ball is the only exception to that, where I love the idea of best ball and I want to really dive in and become a complete degenerate like yourself, but because I'm the dynasty mind, and at this time of year I'm working through my dynasty stuff, I just don't seem to have the time. And I think there's a little bit of a intimidation factor perhaps, where I listen to you talk and I'm like, okay, I don't know as much about best ball theory as I think I need to know to be good at this. So there's an immediate intimidation of, okay, I probably don't know enough to dive in. And that's where I've probably not dove in as far as I should.
I think what's really good about where best ball has evolved to at the minute is that, yes, there's the contests and there's the areas for the complete sickos like myself and the people like Nez, who runs a great channel, the Badge Bros, where they're not just talking over the season, they're talking daily drafts and stuff. And there is so much content like that. But we're seeing contests be rolled out that fit practically any bankroll, that fit any kind of size. So when you dive into DraftKings or Underdog, the big headline contests are always these contests like the Best Ball Mania 3, where there's, $15 million of prize on offer altogether. And you're playing against people who are doing $150, $25 entries. Now, if you've only got a few $100s that you want to play with for the entire best ball off season, then that's not the contest for you. But you look at what Underdog and DraftKings are rolling out. You can look in either of their lobbies and find contests where it's $3 and you've got 20 max entries, which immediately puts you on the same playing field as anyone to be able to go, okay, I get 20 entries, nobody gets more. It doesn't matter if my bankroll is even less than $100 in that case. It can be fine. So I think where a lot of people come to best ball is they'll have played on standalone leagues on Sleeper, where it's like, you're playing against 12 other people. And then we start hearing the sickos like me, and, we start seeing all the stuff on Twitter where it's like, okay, well, stacking's really important. Week 17 correlation is really important. But those individual leagues are so much more, it's self-contained, and you don't need to be stacking because you're not trying to hit the outcome that beats 1,000 other people in the final. You're not trying to beat 400 people in the final week. You just still try to beat 11 people. So contest selection is huge, as Nez mentions there. And understanding what your budget is, if you want to go in and if you want to have fun and if you want to chase the $1 million prizes, that's completely fine, and you can go and do that. But if you want to start taking a slightly more thoughtful approach, then sitting down and going, okay, I have X amount of money which I want to spend. I'm going to spread it between these contests and look for things that are single entry. Or even on Draftkings and Underdog, you can play in best ball leagues that aren't part of these tournaments, but are just standalone ones. Those are a great way to get your feet wet and then dive into the kind of the little bits like, okay, well, I'll play in the Pomeranian, the 20 maxes, the Chihuahua 25 maxes, or the $3 20 max on DraftKings. So, I think in terms of how much have you kind of dove into roster construction theory, Rich? Is that something that you've ever tried to apply? Because I know from a dynasty mindset, you're always very thoughtful about how you set up your roster. Is it something that you try to be mindful of when you're jumping into DraftKings?
I think for me, I've never really done tournament best ball is probably the way to describe it. I've played in, obviously the charity leagues and things, but I've done 12-team leagues that you run, and I've done essentially 12-team leagues on DraftKings and things like that. I've never done, these massive, huge tournaments, and so I've always approached it as a way of it's more. I'm not looking at roster construction, but I'm perhaps more looking at roster balance is probably the way to describe it. And where I'm not saying, right, I'm going to get 2 quarterbacks or 3 quarterbacks, but I'm saying if I'm going early at quarterback, I'm then waiting for my next one. And I'm doing that, but I'm not looking necessarily at specific builds of 2 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 9 wide receivers, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so, I mean, what worked last year in the DraftKings Millie Maker final was this. This was the average build of the 969 finalists who got there. When you round it up, you're basically talking just under 3 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 9 wide receivers, and 3 tight ends. And it's just being thoughtful like that. I think a lot of people land in best ball for the first time and they're like, well, I just want to pick the best players. These are the guys who I think are the right people to play. And if you were only going to enter a handful of contests, by all means, pick the best players, do what makes you happy. It's your money, that's fine. But again, if we're talking about something where you want to start looking at the more thoughtful approach and saying, what can I do to maximize my roster's chances of taking down this $1 million, taking down $2 million, $3 million, everything like that? The fact is you have to. You look at the Best Ball Mania. Last year, Pat Carrain, who we all know, who's been a big part of this community for a long time, he entered 150 teams and took a very thoughtful approach to it. You look at the year before, Liam Murphy, who won it, he 150 maxed it. He's a very thoughtful best ball player. He plays with strategies that some don't agree with necessarily, but he had a mindset of this is what's going to work. Felix, who won the DraftKings Millie Maker the year Liam won as well. Felix went in with 75% Cooper Cup exposure, but he had a very planned out strategy. He was doing things deliberately. So, we kind of get into this point where it's like, okay, well, I need to be mindful of my positional allocation. I shouldn't be taking too many running backs. I shouldn't be taking too many wide receivers. It's all about the balance of your roster. And that's definitely something that I think the first year people play best ball, they definitely get a bit better at understanding.
Do you think that one of the big things when I think of best ball, and it's, since we've started interacting and speaking, I always just joke that you're the king of the stack, and that we talk about stacking being king, and there's so much conversations. And the thing I struggle with, I'll be honest, time and time again, is how how to like break down a stack and how to essentially achieve that stack, because I become obsessed with, I don't want to reach, and perhaps that's my dynasty mind of like not giving up surplus value. And I find myself missing out on stacks time and time again. And yet, whenever I'm in a draft with yourself, or whenever I watch yourself draft, you just casually nail stack after stack after stack, and it's like it's almost as if you're sitting there looking at the 11 other drafters and be like, right, I know I can get this quarterback there. And is that just your in-depth knowledge of ADP and you know where guys are going, or how much prep work are you putting into that kind of stacking process?
So I would say, and we've got some real best ball grinders in the chat here tonight and watching along, guys who enter in more contests than I am, simply because DraftKings won't give me as many contests as I like. I can't play an underdog over here. But the more you know the draft board, the more the, and if you're in a place where you can't play as much best ball as you like, then fire up a mock draft and just draft against the computer or something, or get into these $1 drafts on DraftKings, do these $3 standalone drafts on Underdog and learn the draft board, because the more comfortable you get on the draft board and the more comfortable you get making decisions within 30 seconds, the more comfortable you are knowing, I have an off route here. Like, if you got to think of it, you're on the highway and it's like I'm heading towards this stack. But then if, let's say a player falls 15, 20 spots past ADP, what are you going to do? Are you going to scoop the value, or do you want to take the stack and say the stack is more important? For me, typically, it's the ADP value is more important, because time and time again, that's something that has been shown to really help your teams progress and stand a really good chance. And it also helps you get unique. If a player has fallen to me 20 spots past ADP, they haven't done that for every other person who's been drafting that player. So I have a different team. Like last night, I was in a $3 DraftKings draft, and I started out from, I think it was the 4th or 5th spot, and I had Cooper Kupp. And Devante Adams, who normally goes on the turn, fell all the way back to me, and then Tony Pollard fell into the 3rd round. And immediately I know I already have a team which looks quite different to what a lot of other people have. Now it's just a case of not overreaching at other areas and ruining that team and doing it. So in terms of the total stacks, that's something which can be really difficult. So I've got on screen, again, going back to last year's DK Millie Maker data, 5% of teams that made the almost 1,000 team final had 0 quarterbacks stacked with any player from their team, which to me, that seems difficult. Like I would have to go out of my way not to stack a quarterback with a pass catcher or a running back. That's including running backs. But yeah, generally, if you can find your way to stack in 2 quarterbacks with at least one player from another team, from their own team, then that's going to help you, just because you're betting on less outcomes. And what a lot of people is like, a lot of people around this time of year when the charity tournaments are firing up and stuff, you hear people say stacking's overrated. And it's like, it's not. People are just doing it wrong. People are saying, right, well, I'm going to reach because I need this stack, but they don't understand it. The most popular stacks in the DraftKings final last year were quarterback with 1 wide receiver, followed by quarterback with 2 wide receivers, or quarterback with 1 wide receiver and 1 tight end. It wasn't going, I'm going to get this quarterback and then I'm going to take 3 of his pass catchers. And that's what people slip into, going, well, yeah, I've already bet on this offense, so I need to get loads of them. And there are situations where that's okay, and occasionally I'll do it. Like, I was listening to Pat Kerrane this week talking about how he's been really trying to onslaught Ravens, which is a DFS term that refers to basically try to get as many of the pieces as possible. And, that's okay. But typically, the more picks you put on one offense, the more chances are that, you're not always going to hit week to week, so you need the rest of your roster to sort of like help with that. How much have you, because for us in the best ball community, and I know a lot of people in the chat will feel this way, that week 17 and those playoff weeks where it's the finals of the tournaments have become big conversation points. Is that something you found has spilled out onto the rest of fantasy Twitter, and that you're aware of us all kind of saying, oh yeah, but Kyle Pitts plays Chicago in week 17, so you want to make sure you correlate that?
Literally not at all. I mean, I know I listen to you guys talk about it. Obviously, some of the best ball guys are here. I've heard some more talk about it with kind of Scott Fishbowl and things like that, obviously floating around at the moment. But me with my dynasty hat on, like, it's value over everything, isn't it? And value is always king. So yeah, I couldn't even tell you who's playing who in week 17. I know the Lions are playing the Cowboys just because I keep hearing you going on about CD Lamb and Amon Ross in Brown stacks. So yeah, it's not something I've kind of got my head on. I wanted to pick your brains about one specific scenario that I've literally just drafted. So we've got the Orkney Bowl, which is a best ball tournament. It's not, I think it's 80 teams, maybe 100 teams. So it's not, one of these massive things. But I took Justin Herbert at the back. I think it was drafting 110, 112. I can't remember if it's 10 or 12 teams. I took Justin Herbert at the back end with my first pick. I was thinking, right, I'm targeting a stack. Keenan Allen, his ADP was that he was going to fall to me in about, I think, the 5th round off the top of my head. Of course, he went the pick before me and I got sniped. So I was like, right, I still need my stack, but I'm not going to reach on Mike Williams because this point is ridiculous. So, of course, 2 rounds later, I'm looking at Mike Williams. He goes again, the pick before me. Okay. Now, at this point, it completely threw me because I was like, I'm in a best ball tournament. I've spent an early round pick on a quarterback. I don't want to have an unstacked quarterback. So I'm then thinking, right, what do I do? Do I go and just take a flyer and get Josh Palmer later? Quentin Johnson had also gone by this point as well, which is worth pointing out. Do I go and get Gerald Everett later? Like, I just didn't know what to do at that point. So how would you approach that situation?
So in that case, we're talking about players in the double-digit rounds, like, Gerald Everett and, Josh Palmer. At that point, I'm completely okay reaching slightly with them because their worth to you is slightly increased because of the stack. And once we get into the double-digit rounds, it feels a lot easier to reach for those stacks. And in the Orkney Bowl in particular, 10-team league, and you're talking about if you make it to the final, you're only playing a certain amount of other players. So I wouldn't mind reaching on that. And it's super flex, I believe. So it's like, you want to make sure you've got certain pockets of stacks and bits like this. Yeah, as Deft Angel says, Pat talked about this week, how we all know what's happening in week 17, but nobody knows who's playing in week 1. Nailed it. But yeah, like for me, then by the time we get into the late rounds, because nobody really wants to draft Josh Palmer an awful lot of minute, that just increases his value to me. So I would be making probably, I would be definitely keeping an eye on him and maybe taking him ahead of his ADP. But also, I think when you're playing these kind of charity tournaments or stuff, go and look at what the underdog ADP is. Go and look at what the Draftkings ADP is because it's so different to sleeper ADP.
It's wild, isn't it?
And I can guarantee you, I'm not paying any attention to sleeper ADP. I just look against Draftkings, I look against underdog, and I go, if it's good enough in those situations, then it's good enough in these situations, and I just kind of roll with them. We will jump into a draft in a few minutes' time, and we'll keep talking through stuff. Rich, is there anything more you want to talk about before we get into a draft?
No, I think let's go sort of super beginner steps if you want. If you're like me, you've played some best ball, you've dabbled in it. What would you say is the key things to do? Is it establish a budget, work out kind of how you're going to attack, what kind of contest you're going to attack, or do you just go on DraftKings app and start drafting straight away?
I think the first thing to do is to get into a fast draft and actually understand it. And whether that's the $1 ones on DraftKings, I mean, like, they're pretty wild. People don't really care about $1. But if you've not been on the clock yet and you've not had 30 seconds per pick, it's such a different vibe to when you're sitting in a sleeper draft and you can go, okay, let me just Google some information, make sure that nothing's changed about this player. Let's do that. Because you need to get comfortable with that 30-second timer. You need to get comfortable with the ADP. And yeah, it's, understanding the budget, understanding what's going to be fun for you. If you feel like, you don't want to draft any teams till July and then you're just going to go ham, that's completely fine. But having a plan at this point in the best ball, development is absolutely critical because it's going to keep evolving. There's going to be more and more contests in July and August. And if you haven't considered what it is you want to do between now and August, then you're really going to, you could either run out of budget or you could just run out of desire to keep drafting. A lot of people burn out. Like for the last 2 years, I've hit July and then I've taken a week off. And at that week, it gives me a chance to kind of look at my exposures, look at my builds, be thoughtful about what I've not achieved with my exposures and stuff, as well as looking at what I'm uncomfortable with. So it can feel a little bit like you log on to Twitter and everybody's like, jump in this draft, and it can feel a little bit relentless, but it doesn't need to be relentless. You can take things at your own pace. You can work out what suits you and really take your time with it.
Makes sense. So what you're saying is that because I take 12 hours to make draft picks in dynasty leagues, that I'm not going to be prepared for this 30 seconds of pick.
It's going to be fun. We are going to jump in just a minute. So we're going to be drafting in the Draftkings $10 Millie Maker, $1 million up top. There is, various prizes for 100,000. If you finish in 100,000 or more, if you finish inside the top 10, finish inside the top 100, I believe it's 10,000. So this is a 150 max contest, so you can have up to 150 entries. Fast ones, which are 30 seconds per pick. Slow ones, which are 8 hours per pick. They are very slow, though, so be prepared for that. If you jump in, you probably won't make a pick in the first day. If you're in the chat ready to jump in with us, better jump in now. And while you're here, I know everybody here will already be subscribed. But if you're not, down below, hit subscribe. All the way to 2,000 subscribers is coming next. So we are picking at 9 overall. If you're in the chat and you also jumped in, let us know you're there. So we've got 1 minute and 50 before we start. Let's see what we've got going on in the chat. Chris from Fantasy Football Garage, great channel. Go check his out. Really appreciate his support. To learn quickly, I try to analyze each team post-draft, spending just a few minutes reviewing and thinking about what I could do differently next time's helped me. 100%. Looking at the inflection points in the draft and going, okay, well, if I didn't take this quarterback and this wide receiver at this point, and I took a quarterback and a wide receiver at this point instead, what does that look like? It's very much a DFS mindset where people talk about 2v2s or 3v3s. If you swapped out two people in those kind of bits and stuff, seems like a lot of people in here, Felix and James, neither of them got in with us. It was 10 or 12 when we jumped in. What a shame, but we will be, of course, back next week for more. And Beaker from Spike Week hit the overflow into the next draft. That's all right, guys. You can keep with us and enjoy as we go along. So Rich, we'll be picking at 9th. In terms of ADP, that's like AJ Brown, Bijan Robinson area. Again, I know that your dynasty mind, do you feel like a little bit of surprise seeing Bijan that low or that high? Was this what you were expecting when we were talking about him a couple of months ago being the best running back to come in since Saquon Barkley?
I think I'm shocked that he's this low. I think I said, I want to say February time, maybe even March time, that I thought he'd be a top 5 pick in redraft. I'm a little bit shocked that he's at 10, quite frankly. He's my RB2 in redraft. I think he's going to be incredible the second he hits the field. We've seen time and time again rookie running backs produce incredibly. So yeah, I like that value that sort of late in the draft. I think he's got everything that you'd ever want in terms of a prospect and the upside to boot.
It's a bit strange because like when DraftKings opened, not long after the draft, he was going around this range at around 6 and 7 ahead of Austin Eckler when there was a bit of ambiguity about what Austin Eckler was going to be doing this year. There were rumors of a trade, unhappiness with his contract value. But then Eckler got money rejigged, and then Eckler jumped ahead of Bijan Robinson. And I'm just not really sure why Bijan Robinson's ever slid down to 10, because for me, I'd take him ahead of Austin Eckler. I think Austin Eckler has much more downside case this year, and there haven't been any bad reports for Bijan, so it's tricky.
Do you think that part of it is Underdog taking over, shall we say, and where Underdog is so much more wide receiver heavy that it's pushing those wide receivers up in DraftKings more than perhaps in previous years?
There's possibly an element of it. I mean, Underdog started drafting, like, the second that the season finished, the big board competition was out, and then the big board but Superflex. We had all these big contests then. And ADP does get determined a little bit by that. FFPC started drafting around about the Super Bowl. So these early contests definitely, it sets the mindset. We're a couple of picks away here. Nothing too crazy yet. Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill going before us, one pick ahead of us. Be Stephon Diggs, AJ Brown, Bijan Robinson. Where do you want to go with the first pick here, Rich?
I mean, I feel under pressure. I'd lean Bijan, but he's just
Bijan
gone.
Just got taken ahead of us, yeah.
let's go AJ Brown. I'd prefer AJ Brown over Stephon Diggs for sure.
Yeah, I think. How do you feel about Stephon Diggs in the situation in Buffalo?
I'm terrified, if I'm being honest. I think he's a complete diva. I think he would do anything for himself. The latest rumours is that he doesn't like Josh Allen and they've got a rift. So, yeah, I'm absolutely terrified. I wouldn't be shocked if he somehow manages to force his way out this late in the year. It's absolutely wild, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tricky because you look at last year and he was targeted such a high rate. That can't be what it is, Then there was the talk about, okay, well, he redid his contract on the idea that they were going to get DeAndre Hopkins, and now they seem to be out of the DeAndre Hopkins race, and he seems to be annoyed about that. But what does Stephon Diggs want? That seems to be the thing. And if it's not a case of him and Josh Allen have fallen out, then what is it? So I think it's definitely fair to be a little bit worried about this. So we'll be up in a few picks. Jalen Hurts does go right about where we are because he goes in line with AJ Brown's ADP. It's incredibly common to see the two stacked together. If Jalen Hurts falls to us, is that just an auto pick for this one? You don't feel the need to get cute, or do you want to look at the other players we've got there? Barkley, Waddle, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb.
I mean, I'm team late round quarterback, but I feel like I'm with the stack king. We've kind of got to get the stack, haven't we?
Well, we can take the stack. I'll add it to the queue just in case. But Saquon Barkley, I know you're a big Barkley fan, but it's this kind of pool of Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, down to like Chris Olave.
It's not a nice point, is it? I don't like any of those running backs there. I'm concerned about basically there's a knock on all of them. Too early for as much as I love Olave. I think we just go with Hurts.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. And I think I've not had a lot of exposure to that. Like, I think I've only drafted Jalen Hurts in a couple of drafts because typically I'm finding these early quarterbacks just a little more expensive than I'd like to pay for them. It wouldn't be a surprise if we see Mahomes go to the Kelsey owner here, and then possibly Josh Allen might make it to about the 3-2, the 3-3. There we go, Mahomes straight away to Kelsey.
So are we thinking with quarterback here where we've gone one early? I know you always talk about 2 before 12. Would you be looking at like round 10, 11, 12 for that second quarterback? You're on mute, Tom.
When it's the elite quarterbacks, I definitely don't mind pushing it a bit at times. I think there's an argument to be made that, you can wait. And ultimately, if Jalen Hurts doesn't perform for you, then your team's cooked anyway because you spent a second-round pick on a player. And if you spend a second-round pick on a player and they don't pan out, then you're going to need a lot of other things to go right. Generally, in these drafts, with it being 20 rounds on Underdog, definitely with 18 rounds, if I've taken an elite quarterback, I stop at 2. Here, this year, I've been sprinkling in more exposure to 3 quarterback builds, particularly with it being early and some of the later round quarterbacks going later. I think when we get down the draft board, you might be a little surprised at how late CJ Stroud and Bryce Young go. These kind of rookies who in the dynasty circles have been getting plenty of hype. But yeah, so I think it ultimately really depends on what happens between here and about the 8th round. I think we can look, you look down the quarterback list and there's no way before Trevor Lawrence, who goes at ADP of 60, that I'd be taking another. And then there's a bit of a tier break to Watson at 84. So around this area, Dak Prescott to Kirk Cousins, Anthony Richardson, it starts getting semi-interesting, really. But yeah, so we're a few picks away. Nothing too crazy. You know, Josh Allen went to the Austin Eckler owner, who through 3 rounds has got 2 running backs and a quarterback. The team out of the 1 spot has a nice kind of 0 RB team build with Justin Jefferson, Chris Olave, Devonta Smith. The team ahead of us is Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Taylor, which might be one which we look back in a few weeks when ADPs get pushed up as more casual users come into the drafts. That isn't a common pairing. We're 1 pick away. Breece Hall, Lamar Jackson, Breece Hall goes. So we've got Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen, Deebo Samuel, Jahmyr Gibbs, Travis Etienne, Joe Burrow, Amari Cooper.
Keenan Allen stands out to me, but I don't know if you have any discerning thoughts.
No, I'm completely fine with that. I've been kind of mixing in this whole range. You can see my exposures here. I've got the spike week overlay. So the first number is my exposure in this slate, and then in this tournament, 11, 11, 15. So it's kind of, I'm fine with all of those players. And I think that after them comes a pretty miserable tier where, apart from Jerry Jeudy, I'm not interested in Amari Cooper too much because I'm worried about DeAndre Hopkins effect. And I just worry about the ball being spread around a little more. I don't mind as we get down here, but yeah, having 2 wide receivers through 3 rounds feels quite nice.
And I think for me, I'm a big Keenan Allen believer. I've got him in that tier along with Wilson, St. Brown, Waddle this year. So I'm happy grabbing him at that sort of value.
Yeah, just going to bring attention to this comment from Deft Angel. A bold gambit would be to take Smith and try and catch Hurts in the 3rd, but you might get about 10 to 15% of the time in the 9 spot. Yeah, you're really relying on a 12 pick slide for Hurts, which is a little tricky. I think if Hurts was going, around this sort of area, and I could take AJ Brown and Devonta Smith and see if I could push him, I'd probably try it a bit more. I know some people on Underdog have been taking AJ Brown early to try and push it, and then take Devonta Smith slightly earlier in the 2nd round. We've got Kev in the chat. Appreciate you here tonight, Kev. 108 is really tough for elite QB because you can get boxed out. Any of those attractive 3rd round running backs, you stuck with Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper for tier break. Yeah, 100%. And we've got Tom wants to go Lamar. Believe me, I've got enough Lamar exposure. It's good. It's good to mix in some non-Lamar exposure. And I'm trying to be very balanced and not get too carried away. But I spent a good portion of today in a group chat where we were talking up Lamar as a MVP prospect and all the Todd Monken hype. We're 1 pick away, Rich. So far, 1 QB, 2 wide receivers. Etienne, Najee Harris, Jerry Jeudy, Justin Fields, Christian Kirk, down so Joe Mixon, Christian Watson, TJ Hawkinson. What are you feeling?
It's a pretty disgusting point in the draft, I'll be honest.
It really is.
Yeah. I don't like any of them. Can we just auto pick? Who stands out to you?
Well, I've been drafting Jerry Jeudy a fair bit because I think, there's plenty of stuff that looks like he could break out this year. You look at his final stretch down season, he was fantastic. I think over the last 6-7 weeks, he was producing at the same points touch as Justin Jefferson. So let's grab him, keep leaning into this kind of 0 RB build that we've got going.
I think Judy's fascinating. I can't make up my mind. He averaged 4 yards per route run versus man coverage last year. And I can't decide whether that is just an incredible number that means I should be drafting all of him, or whether it's a horrific number that is unsustainable and is due for massive regression. And I could argue it either way, but it's an interesting value, certainly.
Got a couple of shouts for Watson in the chat, Christian Watson. And he's definitely a polarizing player. Like, I find I struggle to click him. Not because I dislike him. I've got a soft spot for anyone out of North Dakota State. It's one of the few teams that I've been to watch in America. And so, when you're aligned with a great team like North Dakota State, you've got to keep an eye out for their players. But I think the difference in where Christian Watson is getting drafted to where Romeo Doubs is getting drafted is really difficult for me to comprehend. There's plenty of ways this season could play out where Romeo Doubs ends up being a lot closer to Christian Watson than what the ADP is speculating. So, yeah, I haven't taken a lot. I will try and get a bit more, though.
And let's not forget my guy, Jaden Reed. I think I wouldn't be shocked if Jaden Reed's the target leader in that offense. I think Christian Watson's going to get the high-value touches. He's going to get the deep shots, he's going to get the red zone looks, but I don't think he's going to get the commanding volume in that offense.
And where this spot in the draft is, I mean, there's definitely an element of boom or bust nature to players. You got Mike Williams. Who knows what's going to happen with him? There's Najee Harris. Is he going to steal back all the work from Jaylen Warren? Christian Kirk, can he succeed in an offense with a true downfield threat in Calvin Ridley? Amari Cooper, what's it going to look like for him with Deshaun Watson? So the fourth round, there's so many questions there, and it's a really interesting point of the draft. So we've got like this team of a one spot who've taken like a double late anchor RB build. Like, you could make an argument that Kenneth Walker and Joe Mixon should be going in the second and third round, and maybe by the time we get to August, it could completely be that. So it would be interesting. Alexander Mattison going in the fifth round. Does that surprise you, Rich? I know you haven't been in these best ball drafts much.
I find that absolutely wild. I can't get on board with the Alexander Mattison hype train, and yeah, that sort of capital is absolutely wild to me.
Shout out to all laughing in the chat. Appreciate you being here. Go on, Rich. Say what you were gonna.
I was gonna say. So as we're coming up here, I know all this talk about the running back dead zone. I mean, Aaron Jones feels like a really good value at this point. If he's still on the board, is he someone that you're taking, or are you avoiding running back in this point and going for 0 RB?
So you can see my exposure here, these first two numbers. I've not drafted Aaron Jones at all. I think because I quite like this wide receiver tier, Drake London, Chris Godwin. You see I've got 19%, 13%, J.K. Dobbins, 20%, and then a bit of Brandon Ayuk and a lot of Marquise Brown. But if you want to go Aaron Jones here, I don't mind it at all.
Can we get one of those wide receivers at the next tier? Because I like Brandon Ayuk, I like Marquise Brown. So I wonder if we grab a running back here and get a receiver back around.
Absolutely, we should definitely. I mean, you look at these teams here, and that team's probably taking a wide receiver. This team's probably going to start thinking about the kind of stuff we did, about whether it's time to take a different position. So it's all good. But Kev saying he's boots on the ground in Fargo. If you want some NDSU stuff, let me know. Oh, I will more than likely be in touch, Kev. That's very kind of you to offer. We've got FF saying with Drake London, who does go to pick after us, followed by Chris Godwin. So we've got this team on the turn, and then we'll see what we end up with. But
so is that five wide receiver start? Is that something you see often?
It's something I like to do. It's something I think for me, I'm always looking to try and get 5 wide receivers before I've left round 9. It's kind of one of those situations where that's something that out of the finalist teams last year on DraftKings, over 50% of those teams did have 5 wide receivers by the time they left round 9. So I don't mind taking 5 straight. I think where the running backs are interested now, you could look at A.K. Dobbins here. You could look at, DeAndre Swift and play it as if you were setting up like a late hero RB build. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see this wide receiver 0 running back team take one of J.K. Dobbins and DeAndre Swift. And of course, the opportunity cost of using them as a hero running back at this point, when you've got, your 3 starting wide receivers, which is what you have on DraftKings, as well as 2 who can fill it in and out of a flex each week, could be very good. But of course, they stick with wide receiver and go with Kadarius Toney just to kill what I was saying. So we could take Marquise Brown here, who I know you mentioned, DeAndre Swift or Miles Sanders, Tyler Lockett, Dallas Goedert for the stack.
Oh, yeah. See, I'd say auto pick Marquise Brown, but you mentioned the stack.
Well, let's take Marquise Brown, because what he does over here, you see us in green, he plays the Eagles in week 17. So that gives us a little bit of week 17 correlation, which I can bring up. You can see so far what we've built out without even really trying. We've got Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Marquise Brown for the bring back on that week 17 stack, and then Keenan Allen and Jerry Jeudy, who also play each other, which feels like one of those could be sneaky good week 17 games. So through 6 picks, how are you feeling about this team, Rich?
Yes, I'm pleased. I'll be honest. I feel like we're getting good value. I'm a little bit gobsmacked and shocked how we've managed to walk into stacks and week 17 correlation, but maybe that's it. Maybe it's literally as easy as that.
Well, that's, I think, a big difference between ADP here and ADP on Sleeper is the ADP is aligned with stacks on here. We talked about earlier. Travis Kelce and Mahomes lines up, AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts lines up. Josh Allen has been falling, but even if he fell into the third round, he probably wouldn't go too much further than about the middle of the third round because people will start taking digs, hoping to get Allen in the middle of the third round. You look at Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow quite often falls to the back end of the fourth because people have Jamar Chase and quite often take T. Higgins as well. So it's not uncommon. Like Justin Fields often goes around the back end of 4 and is stacked with DJ Moore. So the draft board really does a lot of the work for you because so many people are stacking. And that's why whenever you see a team who aren't stacking completely on DraftKings, it kind of stands out a lot. We are 3 picks away. Dallas Goedert is at the top of ADP. Then Dalvin Cook, of course, he doesn't have a team. Might sign with the Vikings. Might sign with the Dolphins. Who knows? Then Darren Waller, Jordan Addison, Treylon Burks, Rashad White, and Jahan Dotson. Anybody standing out to you, Rich?
I mean, if we can get, I can't believe Goddard's going to last 2 more picks, but if Goddard does, I mean, that seems ridiculous.
Well, yeah. Okay. I mean So we could have taken him last time. We didn't. We went down the route of the running back and the wide receiver, and now he falls to us 15 picks past ADP. And part of that is because people are looking at stacks. People are saying, all right, we've got all these teams who've gone tight end already. So there's 3, 4, 5 tight ends off the board. Kyle Pitts doesn't always go ahead of Dallas Goedert. I have seen Goedert creeping ahead of him to people who've got the Eagles stacks and feel eager on it. But yeah, what we got there was fantastic getting Dallas Goedert. I'm very pleased with that. We've got Chris in the chat saying that Aaron Jones has been one of my favorite later RB anchors lately. I think he's somebody that I need to come around on. The Green Bay offense in general has been a little bit tricky for me because ever since Jordan Love signed his contract, it wasn't the kind of contract that installed any faith. It was like, almost hedging against himself. Most players, you see them want to get to the franchise tag. They want to force the decision. They want to make the team pay up. And it just didn't happen. Instead, he took what was a very friendly deal for the team, in my opinion. And when I sit back in July and kind of analyze all my exposures properly, that's probably one area where I will just have to get a little more comfortable with them because I tend to like a kind of balanced approach. You've got Rob in the chat. He says, Rich looks like he's spending about $1 million in his head already.
Yeah,
that's $500,000. It's an even split there. just going to put that on video evidence. We've got Anthony who's saying that he loves Bill so far. It's got Inner Slow with a really similar start from Brent. It's got AJB, Hertz, Hollywood, but got Ramondre and Etienne in rounds 3 and 4 instead. Love that. I think Ramondre is definitely a player that
I'm all in on Ramondre this year.
Yes, very much so. So we're 2 picks away. We've got a quarterback, 1 running back, 4 wide receivers, and our tight end. And this kind of area of the draft, you can go a lot of different ways with stuff. We've got David Montgomery near the top of ADP. We've got Alvin Kamara, Evan Ingram, who's not somebody I'd really be looking to draft here because we've got Dallas Goedert, Dak Prescott to Quentin Johnston, Cortland Sutton, Elijah Moore. And that's kind of about as far down the draft as we probably need to reach. What are you saying, Rich?
So Sutton stands out to me, but also Alvin Kamara, and I can explain perhaps after because I don't think we've got enough time to dive in. But I wonder if Alvin Kamara is currently being undervalued because of this looming suspension. So your pick between those two, I'm happy to bow to you.
I'm going to take Cortland Sutton, but it's not because I don't want to draft Kamara or I don't think that you're going to have a good argument for it. It's just yesterday alone, I took Kamara about 20 picks later than here at 108. So I think Kamara is a player that I'm comfortable taking when he slides even further than he's already being undervalued in your mind. But go on, make your elevator pitch to me.
So, okay, we're talking best ball, and we're spending all this time worrying about the playoffs and week 17 correlation and that kind of stuff. And Alvin Kamara is going, I don't know how many rounds, 4 rounds after someone like Joe Mixon this year. I think that Alvin Kamara's got a higher target share upside, is a more explosive player than Joe Mixon. And, okay, the Bengals are going to be a better offense, but I think Alvin Kamara is going to have a high slice of that pie. And I just think that everybody's so quick to just discard him as a fantasy relevant option at the moment. And yet people are still clamoring after Dalvin Cook, who's not even got a team. People are clamoring after Joe Mixon, who could still have his contract restructured. That's not gone away. That there's still talk that will be happening about that contract. And I just think that if we're looking for upside, there's plenty of upside with Kamara, and at the price you're having to pay, it's low risk.
Yeah, I definitely think there's situations, particularly in this full PPR format, where you can pay off. It takes 7 receptions and a touchdown or something. I just, I kind of struggled because last year we saw Alvin Kamara didn't really score many touchdowns. I think he had like 3 of the 5 or something that he scored all season in one game. Taysom Hill was getting put in at the 10-yard line, and now you've brought in Jamal Williams, who was one of the league's best red zone weapons last year, who I believe like 14 or 15 of his touchdowns came from inside the 10-yard line. And so you add in Taysom Hill to that factor, and I just worry about how much of a valuable role is for Kamara. Of course, you hit a point where it's like, I'll take him over James Cook, I'll take him over AJ Dillon every day of the week, but often I don't have to. And he did go a couple of picks after us, and we're kind of creeping around and being back on the clock. Javonte Williams, Odell Beckham, Zay Flower, Brian Robinson Jr., David Njoku, Samaje Perine, Alan Lazard, Rashad Bateman at the top of the board.
Do we need to be thinking about a second quarterback here?
Not quite yet, I don't think. I think we can probably push to like the one. So you look at the team, we could look at Kyler, we could look at Russell Wilson. I don't think we quite need to get there yet. Is there anyone standing out of these guys near the top?
Bateman's the one that stands out to me. I think he's the best Baltimore receiver, and the fact that he's going as the third off the board, I think is slightly wild.
Yeah, let's do that, because I think then, I've got 24% exposure to Rashad Bateman, so yeah, easily persuaded. But also now with 6 wide receivers, we can really be done with that point. We've got to round 10. We've got 6 wide receivers, 1 running back, 1 quarterback, and 1 tight end. And we can really push the amount of running backs we're going to add. We can go to a 3 tight end build, just giving us a little bit of an escape route if Dallas Goedert doesn't get as many screen passes as he did last year. If we feel the need and we get a little caught out quarterback, we could push to 3, because the wide receiver place is just going to be a complete strength for us. David Njoku and Zay Flowers go a little after us. Odell Beckham's ADP is higher than Bateman and Flowers, and I always feel like it gives you a good idea of how smart the draft room is if Odell Beckham actually goes ahead of Bateman and Flowers, because most smart people I know are not taking him there.
This is where you'll need to remind me that we don't want to be drafting more wide receivers then in that case, because I'm still, my dynasty head on, I'm drafting as many wide receivers as I can. So,
well, we can still end up with probably about 8 wide receivers altogether, or, depending on the quality of running backs we pick up in the next couple of rounds, maybe, you can push up to 9, but we probably don't need to get there. With 2 picks away, Odell Beckham's on the board, Brian Robinson, Samaje Perine, Pat Freiermuth, Zach Charbonnet, Jared Goff, Zay Jones, Tyler Boyd, Jamal Williams.
Do we want to reach a bit and grab Russ for that stack? Or, Samaje Perine.
I think I'd rather take a running back and push the quarterback and see if he falls to us, because, we've got Jerry Jeudy, we've got Courtland Sutton. What is Russell Wilson to anybody else in the draft, unless they're planning to take Greg Dulcich straight away? So we're on the clock here. Which of these running backs do you like the most, Rich?
I'd prefer Perine out of those guys, but
don't threaten me with good time. Yes, we're probably in danger of getting a little bit heavy on our Broncos exposure now with Perine, Sutton, and Jeudy, but that's okay. I think we probably would want to avoid Dulcich. I think it's something I'm trying to get better at. Sometimes just taking players for the sake of a stack. But their P Ryan lined up perfectly. I'm very bullish on P Ryan this year. I was drafting a lot of P Ryan when drafts opened at like ADP of 160, and he's kind of crept up to this 10th round now. So yeah, it's all good. If you are here, people, again, we just want to say thank you. 1,000 subscribers, far quicker than we expected. Couldn't have done it without all you people checking out this channel. If this is the first time you're here, Best Ball, Dynasty, Redraft, DFS, we're going to cover everything for you. We'll be going through the season as well as the off-season. And after the draft tonight, when we've had a look at these teams, we're going to talk about some of the plans we've got going forward. So do stick around for that, because we're really excited about it. And I think you're really going to be interested to hear what we've got planned. So a lot of teams have kind of added those second quarterbacks. We've got this team who were auto-drafting here. We've got Aaron Rodgers, Geno Smith, Sam Howell. Derek Carr goes off the board to the team from the 1 spot, who I believe has Jefferson or Olave. So that's 2 kind of nice stacks. Desmond Ridder goes to this team out of a 2 spot. So
does that just frustrate you when there's a team that's auto picking?
No,
drafting
11-team league. That's fine. 8% more. 8% of the draft room's just gone, and we can just worry about what we're gonna do. We'll figure it out. There's, you get comfortable on the draft board. You learn to pivot, and you learn what might come back to you and what won't.
I've just seen they've taken Jerick McKinnon in the 7th as well. Like.
So yeah, it's not something I'm too worried about. Let other teams do what they do. Coach, appreciate you with helping us get to this point. Russell Wilson doesn't quite make it back to us. A team who took 3 quarterbacks on the bounce takes it. We're back on the clock and should probably take a look. We could go running back here, the likes of Khalil Herbert, Devin Achane, or we could go Rondale Moore for that Week 17 correlation, Rashad Penny, Damian Harris, Jacoby Myers.
Is Penny or Moore too much correlation? Or I mean, Herbert's a player I love.
I think let's go Herbert because, yeah.
I guess that's my question for you: is how much is too much stacking and correlation?
I think it's ideally I want lots of mini correlations. If there's a particular game like here, we are pinning all our hopes on the idea that Denver Chargers in Week 17 is going to be fantastic, and we can live with if the Eagles trounce the Cardinals, but Marquise Brown has a day where he goes 8 catches for 100 yards, then that's fine. That's fantastic for us.
If Marquise Brown's still on the Cardinals by the end of the season,
I think that's sneaky something which should be being talked about a little bit more. He's on to his final year of his contract. He's represented by the same agent who managed to get Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown all into different contracts with different situations last year. So he's an agent who is used to causing a little bit of drama. Marquise Brown didn't take part in OTAs, I don't believe. I think he was there but not practicing. So at some point, do this Cardinals front office say, we need to make a decision, we need to do something?
If you can get a 2nd-round pick from him rather than pay him when you're probably going to potentially move on from quarterback and try and save money there, I wouldn't be shocked if he's moved at the deadline, certainly.
Yeah. So we're a couple of picks away. In terms of quarterback, you can see we could take Jordan Love if we wanted to stack him with Aaron Jones, or we could wait and take Kyler and then perhaps take a 3rd quarterback later if we really felt like we needed it. But we're still a little way away from them in ADP, unless you really like Jordan Love. Are you bullish on him?
No, not really. I'm not a massive believer. I think there's upside there. I think there's potential, but not to reach on him.
So we could take a tight end here. We could look at Chigozie Okonkwo. We could look at Cole Kmet or Tyler Higbee. And if we took Tyler Higbee, we could take him out, and look at setting up a stack with Matthew Stafford.
Jaylen Warren stood out to me as a good value and a good pick here. Is that a player that? Oh, he's just gone, has he? He's
just gone, but I have 25% exposure to Jaylen Warren, so I would have been all over that, I think.
Should we go Higbee then? And if, as presume he doesn't go?
Yeah, let's take Higbee and push him see what happens with Stafford. Hopefully nobody in this draft is listening to us. So, yeah, I think, you look at these teams, that's a 1 QB team there next to us. There's a little danger of that. A 1 QB team at 4. The team with Cooper Kupp already has 2 quarterbacks in Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert. There is no way they need Matthew Stafford, but things get a little wild on DraftKings. This team over here with 4 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 4 wide receivers, and 0 tight ends might take him just to, maybe I'll start tilting at that point. But we've still got the out of Kyler Murray, who goes in a similar ADP. And I feel bullish that Kyler Murray's going to be on the field for a decent portion of the season.
You seem a little bit stressed or nervous about quarterback. Have we pushed it a bit too far, do you think?
I don't think we've pushed it too far. This is an area where, there's plenty of outs here. So let's say that doesn't happen. Then we can look at, there's probably no stacks where you're looking at Kenny Pickett as a route to payoff. But Stafford and Kyler Murray are both completely in play. We could take Bryce Young and stack him with Hayden Hurst and stack him with, one of the Carolina players like DJ Chark. We could take Brock Purdy just naked and just say, okay, but his ADP is going to increase by probably 20, 30 spots in the next month. CJ Stroud, we could take him and look to stack him with some of the Texans who are available late. Mac Jones, the Patriots stack, is the last girl at the dance, the one that nobody wants to dance with. But you can get Tyquan Thornton, you can get Mike Gesicki, you can get Hunter Henry. So it's fine. There's plenty of paths there. We could look at Jimmy Garoppolo with like Michael Mayer and even a Hunter Renfro stack, playing into the idea that Hunter Renfro sticks around. So, no, I'm kind of okay with it. I think, again, just being comfortable knowing that there's all these potential different paths that we could go down if we want to.
So if we get the choice here between Stafford and Kyler, you'd lean Stafford, would you?
I would lean Stafford because I think there's going to be a good chance for them to really be good. Well, we could do Marquise Brown and just play into the real upside case and just hope, because we're back on.
I'd prefer Stafford because I'm not convinced that Kyler plays at all this year. I think there could be a chance that they sit him out and he doesn't come back. And I think that the Rams are undervalued as much as I think there's a terrible offense and the offensive line is appalling. I think that Stafford is going to want to play this year. There's a reason he's not retired. I think that we're getting the injury discount, but actually he was okay. He could have played last year, I think, if they'd have been competitive.
Yeah, I think it was like an accumulation of things, the elbow, the concussions, and just sensing where the Rams were. And, Cooper Kupp said he could have played if he absolutely had to, but there was no point, so we shut him down. And I'm completely fine taking that because I think, it doesn't give us any kind of week 17 correlation or anything, but it's probably the safer bet in a lot of ways. And the Rams defense looks ugly. It looks like they could be putting the offense into plenty of shootouts. I think with Kyler, I might have been tempted to look at a 3 quarterback build because I am a bit more bullish than you, but I think we could have supplemented him with somebody late, like maybe like a Mac Jones or something, just to give us that little bit. But like Jordan says in the chat, with the quarterback capital spent, you're betting on Hurts being a smash every week, bar his bye week. And the Eagles, they have a bye week in week 10. I don't think Okay, so we will be looking for a third quarterback here.
See, this is where I struggle. I find there's so much that I'm having to take in.
I think normally that honestly, I don't tend to make those kind of mistakes too often.
You could blame that on me. I pushed you into that one.
Well, we could take Kyler Murray if he makes it to us here. He'll be. Oh no, there he goes. Of course. So let's not worry about that for a couple of picks. We'll figure it out. Worst case, if we give up a little bit of points in 1 week, it's not the end of the day. So Tyler Algier, Irv Smith, Raheem Mostert, Bryce Young, Don. Sorry.
Mostert feels, that's a lead back on a potentially offense. It might only be 2 weeks before he gets injured, but it feels like at this point in the draft, that's amazing value.
completely fine with that. Pete Overs on last Wednesday. Go back and check that show out if you haven't already. He talked about how much he was drafting Miami running backs in general, but particularly Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, feeling like they were very good values. And I've been trying to get more exposure to them over the last few drafts I've been doing because, yeah, it feels like if Dalvin Cook was going to sign, perhaps he would have signed already. We are seeing plenty of quarterbacks going off the board. So we have a team with 4 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 4 wide receivers, and 2 tight ends. I think if you get through round 14 and you've got only 4 wide receivers, you're going to really struggle. It's just those kind of teams just do not tend to progress very well. We've got a team here with 2 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 4 wide receivers. You're counting on Marcus Valdes-Scantling to do an awful lot for you. And, yes, you've got a beastly running back room. You took Najee Harris in the 4th round and then 4 consecutive running backs. At that point, I'm not sure what Antonio Gibson was giving you over the likes of Alan Lazard, Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, as opposed to, ending up in a position where you're going to require a lot of late players to really help you.
So we've got 4 running backs here. So I appreciate we've got kind of a late anchor running back. How many running backs are you typically trying to build out that run with?
So we've got our bye weeks. None of them line up at running back, which is nice. So that injuries aside, they should all be available for, never more than 1 running back who's out on a given week at the minute. So I think depending where we take our next running back, we can stop at 5. We might want to push it to 6, depending on how things are going. In terms of tight end, we're going to have to take a 3rd tight end as well because we've got the 2 tight ends on a week 10 bye, which is a little painful after taking got it so early, but we can live with it as long as we don't take any more on a week 10 bye. We'll figure that out. So we're back on the clock. Juwan Johnson, Dawson Knox, Jalen Hyatt, Tajay Spears, Mike Gesicki, Marvin Mims, Jeff Wilson, Jaden Reed. At quarterback, Mac Jones. We could take him and maybe try and set up a Patriots stack for our final quarterback.
Makes sense for that. I might be able to steal Mike Gesicki maybe in the next round if he can make it back round.
Yeah, I think that there's a good possibility of that because I would be taking Juwan Johnson and Dawson Knox ahead of him as Dawson Knox goes off the board. But these teams here, there's one team who've got 1 tight end, so perhaps they're looking for a tight end, but they go running back first. This team on the turn has 3 tight ends, so I feel fairly safe if they're not going to do so. Lee from Michigan, hello. Appreciate you checking us out tonight. If you're not already, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Want to come off here when we finish tonight and see lots of likes. We are flying with content lately, and we have more Dynasty stuff coming up this week. We've got more best ball stuff coming next Wednesday. It was a good time to be in the Fantasy Sanctuary. We are 3 picks away, and so far, Juwan Johnson, Zeke Elliott, Jalen Hyatt, Mike Gesicki, Jeff Wilson, Jaden Reed, all sitting at the top there.
So at this point in the draft, okay, so just looking at the board there, you've got the types of guys like Jalen Hyatt versus someone like a Hunter Renfrow, okay? Jalen Hyatt, obviously rookie, deep play threat, undersized, but potentially boom-bust option. Hunter Renfrow, low ADOT, going to see a high volume. Are you leaning more towards that boom-bust receiver rather than a volume play like Renfrow? Does that depend on your build? Or
So, I mean, credit to Josh Selway, who was on the show there goes Gesicki. He called the Hunter Renfrow breakout a few years ago. And in PPR formats, I mean, it is absolutely gold dust. It's fantastic. Should we take Michael Mayer here as our 3rd tight end? Or do you want to push it later and look at the likes of Tyler Conklin, Hayden Hurst, Isaiah Likely?
Could we wait and grab Hunter Henry late?
Yeah.
Who would we go instead?
Well, wide receiver or running back. We could take one. We could take Gus Edwards here.
Let's do it.
Gus Bus, perennially undervalued.
I presume taking double Miami Dolphins backs in terms of taking someone like Jeff Wilson at that point would have been low EV play.
I think there's situations for it. And James Brimacombe from Football Guys, who was on a few weeks ago, he talked about the certain backfields that he likes targeting for there. Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson being one. And then in terms of other ones, You can look at like the Bears backfield, taking two of them, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, where they have defined roles, or what we're perceiving as defined roles within the offense. But then if something happened to the other running back and they got injured, that one running back, like Antonio Gibson, would suddenly be called upon to do a lot more rushing work than we expect, or Jahmyr Gibbs would suddenly be expected to do a lot more rushing work than if David Montgomery got him injured. So it's less of a worry these days. I think going back a few years, we all had a very narrow view on handcuffing, and it was more attached to redraft, where you are having to make a start decision every week on your bench, and you are having to say, well, this is the guy I'm expecting, and then you spend a whole week watching the other player go off on your bench, and you're tilting, and it's painful, and you've sacrificed 2 spots in your roster and not done anything. But in best ball, it's a different conversation. And what happens if Brian Robinson scores 2 touchdowns and goes for 80 yards in week 16 and helps get you to the final, but then in week 17 it's an Antonio Gibson game and he's the one who's bringing all the points? There's not going to be too many teams who have that combination and can ping pong that kind of scoring. So yeah, it's definitely something I'm more open to than I was a couple of years ago. So we are a couple of picks away. If we want a tight end, we've got Hayden Hurst, Luke Musgrave, Isaiah Likely just gets drafted ahead of us, Jake Ferguson, Trey McBride, which would add to that kind of like non-Kyler Murray Arizona stack that we've built out. Hunter Henry is further down. Wide receiver, we have Wan'Dale Robinson, Josh Palmer, Mecole Hardman, Greg Dortch, Chase Claypool, Robert Woods, Tim Patrick. And yeah,
it's not much, is there?
Yeah, I mean, we are going to need at least one more wide receiver.
Should we go Wan'Dale then and just trust that he was drafted by that regime? He's going to see volume.
Yeah, I like that. And he plays the Chargers. He plays the Rams in week 17, which gives us a little correlation with Stafford. So, yes, Tyler Higbee and Matthew Stafford probably aren't going to put up 40 points between them in week 17. But there's a good chance that if that game has any fantasy goodness, then it could be good. And Wan'Dale Robinson should be fully healthy by then. And with the wide receivers we've got ahead of him, we're not going to be relying on him early on in the season. So I don't mind it. Do you think Wan'Dale Robinson can be a thing this year, Rich? Oh, okay. Clearly did not agree with Wan'Dale Robinson could be a thing. So we'll see if Rich pops back in a minute. So Jimmy Garoppolo goes at the turn. He has kind of crept back up slightly. He was falling a little bit in drafts to like the 19th round at one point. We have a 3-5-7-2 build here. So after the initial tilt about our quarterback situation, feeling much better about things now. I think Mac Jones is fine. We will, with Rich just joining us again. Rich, we're back on the clock. Hayden Hurst, Luke Musgrave, either of those stand out at tight end?
Let's go Hurst.
I think that's a very sensible shout. I think, Hayden Hurst isn't a particularly attractive tight end, and, do get some
Is that a ginger joke?
Hey, we're completely, anyone here is fine. But yeah, he's coming from an offense to Bengals. I don't think people realize that the Bengals targeted the tight end of the lowest position of any team in the league last year. So perhaps he can be that kind of security blanket in Carolina.
Best friend.
Yeah,
time again, won't we?
Yeah. So now, after our initial issues with quarterback, shall we say, and tight end that we caused ourselves, we've got a 3-5.
I feel like I can take the blame for that. I put that on you, Tom. Don't put that on yourself.
That's all right. These things happen in drafts. It's all good. Chris in the chat said Rich wasn't a Wan'Dale fan. He just jumped off the stream as I asked him if he thought Wan'Dale could be a thing this year.
I like Wan'Dale the player. I think that any time that it's a slot gadget type, it concerns me because you're relying on significant volume for him to produce. It also worries me that they brought in about 15 slot wide receivers this offseason, having drafted him last year. But I think that when he was healthy, when he was playing, we saw that he commanded a good enough target share that he should be fantasy relevant. And I think at this value in the draft, that potential target share you're struggling to find elsewhere.
Yeah, so we're a couple of picks away. We could take another running back and have 6 total. We've got Michael Carter, Dwayne McBride, Israel Abanikanda, Latavius Murray.
Izzy feels good. The Jets are talking him up loads. I think Breece Hall's going to be eased in early. I think that I wouldn't be shocked if he's getting significant work week 1, week 2, week 3 early and kind of sees us through that early period.
Nice. I think I'm fine with that. I haven't taken a lot of Abanikanda, but I think, there's a clear upside case to be made. And if he establishes himself as a player, it's hard to see, the team not keeping some faith in him. So we've got 1 pick left. We've got, 3, 6, 3, 6, 7, 3. So this pick really should be a wide receiver. I'm going to let you choose your kind of favorite flyer here. You got.
I have no idea who Rambo is. I feel like being a dynasty guy, I know everyone. Yeah, and I have no idea who Charleston Rambo. I have never heard of that player before in my life.
Honestly, I imagine he must just be getting picked because he's on the Eagles. Isaiah McKenzie, Khalif Raymond.
Corey Davis feels like a value, but do we go Quez Watkins because it's more stacking, or have we already got enough exposure to the Eagles?
I don't mind Quez Watkins because it's been kind of like an interesting play. I mean, you look at what we've got. We've got Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Dallas Goedert. Adding Quez Watkins with the 20th pick, I don't think that's a bad shout. Or in the chat, we've got people calling for Puka. Are you in on Puka? I know you've got a thing for certain types of wide receivers, Rich.
No. Big body guy with a low ADOT that can block well. He's going to be a better NFL receiver than fantasy for me.
I'm not seeing where Tutu is. Oh, there's Tutu all the way down.
Don't threaten me with Tutu, Tom.
Well, let's go Quez Watkins if he falls to us. I think that makes plenty of sense. And then,
do you find yourself at this point in the draft scrolling down that ADP board to be different and to find guys that are going undrafted to try and give you a bit of differential as we get to potentially tournament play?
Definitely. I mean, you go right down, you got guys like KJ Hamler, got Brian Edwards, little Jordan Humphrey, and there's guys who I don't mind adding to stacks. Preston Williams. Occasionally I'll mix these guys in because otherwise it's very easy to just end up with an awful lot. You like a couple of years ago, I ended up with like 25% Devin Duvernay, and nobody needs 25% Devin Duvernay. Really, it's it's one of those situations where it was a lesson learned for me. And I think you look at that was the year where Cordarrelle Patterson absolutely exploded and was fantastic. And really, I think it's okay to have heavy exposures to players the further you get down the board. Like, having 30% exposure to a round 1 player never feels too comfortable to me. But there's guys like Felix, who was in the chat earlier, who, like I mentioned, he won the Millie Maker the year that he had 75% Cooper Cup. That was when he was going in like the 4th round, though. So, but generally when I get down past about round 15, I'm completely fine having 20-25% exposure to a player. But it's also being mindful of what you're passing up from other players around there. So we finished with a 3-6-8-3. We probably could have done a 2 quarterback, 2 tight end build here and gone to 7 running backs, 9 wide receivers. But a couple of mistakes we made, but we're not going to dwell on them. AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, Keenan Allen, Jerry Jeudy, Aaron Jones, Marquise Brown, Dallas Goedert, who fell really nicely to us, Cortland Sutton, Rashad Bateman, Samaje Perine, Khalil Herbert, Tyler Higbee, Matthew Stafford, Raheem Mostert, Mac Jones, Gus Edwards, Wan'Dale Robinson, Hayden Hurst, Izzy Abanikanda, and Quez Watkins. Rich, what are you thinking?
I like it. I really enjoyed the first probably 11, 12 rounds, and then I feel like it went a bit off the rails because, it's trying to marry up ADP with thinking about bye weeks, thinking about correlation. There's about 5 things you've got to consider at one point, isn't there? But I don't dislike it. I don't hate it, and I think that we got a couple of stacks. We got some correlation. So I feel like I'm doing
looking
something
at our
right.
week 17 correlation, we've got the Eagles stack paired with the Cardinals, with Marquise Brown. We've got the Chargers and Denver, Samaje Perine, Keenan Allen, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. So basically what we're hoping for in that week is we're hoping that Jalen Hurts goes nuclear, takes along A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and Marquise Brown. Then we're looking for Samaje Perine to have a big week, as well as probably two of Keenan Allen, Jerry Jeudy, and Cortland Sutton. We've got another week 17 correlation of Raheem Mostert, Gus Edwards, Rashad Bateman, which feels, there's possibly a little bit of tread on some of those tires, but it's fine. And then we've got Matthew Stafford, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Tyler Higbee. So for week 17, that wasn't something we really chased, but it feels okay.
Yeah, looking at that running back room, my only concern, I guess, is that I feel like we've got a lot of guys that are probably going to be okay at the start of the season, but we might be struggling towards the back end in terms of Raheem Mostert, always starts well, does well when he's on the field, but probably going to get injured. Abakandia, we're talking about being useful at the beginning of the season before Breece Hall comes back. The same with Samaje Perine. So maybe we're very reliant on Aaron Jones being useful when we get to that playoff point.
Yeah, and it goes back. What's a good thought experiment here is if we'd taken Alvin Kamara, who you'd mentioned, instead of Cortland Sutton. So if we'd taken Alvin Kamara there and paired him with Aaron Jones, Samaje Perine, Raheem Mostert, and Abanikanda, then we're not relying on Kamara to start the season. If he gets banned for 8 games, that's fine, because we've probably built in 8 games to Samaje Perine being the lead back in Denver whilst Javonte Williams recovers. So in hindsight, I would like that pick back, and I would have gone with your suggestion of Kamara. I think that would have probably helped with running back room that we built out after it. But overall, I don't mind it. Our firepower is in the wide receiver room, and we are going to be relying on that Eagles team to cover us. So we are going to talk about some of our plans for the rest of the summer and going forward in Fantasy Sanctuary. So let me just make us a little bit bigger again. Rich, do you want to announce kind of what we've got planned next? Do you want to tell the people what's going to immediately start popping up on their feeds?
Yeah, so I guess the big thing is the Fantasy Sanctuary is going to move forward, shall we say. So as of this evening, we're going to, because we've hit 1,000 subscribers, we're going to be launching memberships. So we've got a 3-tiered membership. This is going to be basically mirroring my Patreon. So my Dynasty Island Patreon is going to become the Fantasy Sanctuary Patreon. So tier 1, it's going to be 99p a month. I don't know what that is in dollars. I'd guess 80 cents, something like that, is it?
No, well, yeah. So yeah, you're talking about 70 cents. The price of less than a chocolate bar to subscribe to our basic tier. And what we really want, all these tiers are priced very affordably. We're not trying to make the largest amount of money here. We want you to come and be a part of the Discord community with us. We want to be able to give you more access to our thoughts whenever you want them, and not just here on the YouTube channel, but we'll have different channels based on different tiers that you're in, where you'll be able to get access to Rich's Dynasty work. So the Bronze Coconut, which is our tier 1, like Rich said, 99 pence or however many cents that is. You'll get access to custom emojis and YouTube badges when you're here with us on the YouTube channel. You'll get access to the Discord, which Rich has built up the Dynasty Island Discord, which is going to change to the Fantasy Sanctuary one. And there's already a great community in there, lots of fantastic people who we know that you're all going to enjoy chatting with. There'll also be YouTube members only video access, which we are going to start creating occasional videos, which will be for members only. Again, for 99 pence per month, you'll be able to get access to them. So it isn't something, we're not saying you've got to give us a huge amount of money to get this. We want to keep making as much content as possible for all the people who've helped get us this far. The second tier is the Silver Sunset tier. I think you'll agree with all these names are fantastic. So you get all the access that you had in tier 1. You get Rich's Dynasty Survival Kit access, Dynasty Rookie Guide, as well as our combined best ball and redraft rankings. Rich, how much is that one?
So that's £2.99. So in terms of those people that aren't aware of, I guess, my Dynasty Survival Kit, so that's got my Dynasty ranks, my Dynasty trade values, it's got a trade value calculator, it's got a startup calculator, it's got my contractual depth chart, it's got my auction sheet, it's got rookie rankings, it's got, everything you could ever want to play Dynasty is all in one place. And then you'll also get my Dynasty Rookie Guide, which I put together every year. This year's version was £171 pages, had 101 player film reviews, had rankings, all of my rookie model work. So it was pretty comprehensive and in depth, and I probably spent far too much time on it, but it's a labor of love, definitely.
And you're getting access to that for an entire year for less than the price of 4 DraftKings $10 drafts. So we really are trying to keep these prices accessible. The top tier, the Golden Deck Chair, all tier 1 and 2 perks. You get access to the premium DFS content, and there's DFS Discord channels. There'll also be channels for DFS and best ball competitions, which will be running, which you'll get first pick at before they go to anyone else outside of the Discord, outside of our membership. I've been writing about DFS for, I think, 3 seasons now. Whether you've read that on the NFL DFS site, which I used to write for, whether you read it on Football Outsiders. Obviously, I'm not with Football Outsiders at the minute, and I will be finding somewhere to write, whether it goes direct to Discord or wherever it's for another site. You will have access to all my plays every week. I will be there on a Sunday to answer your DFS lineup questions. I will be able to talk about what I'm seeing from other people around the industry and getting a gauge on rostership and things like that. And of course, any questions, me and Rich will be there to answer them. How much is the Golden Deck Chair, Rich?
So that's £4.99, which, it's a bargain, isn't it? You're getting premium DFS content, premium best ball content, premium Dynasty content for less than £60 a month. It's less than £60 a year.
Exactly. So, 6 drafts, that's the equivalent of what you're getting here for the whole year, and you'll get access to huge amounts of content from me and Rich. If you don't want to sign up, that is entirely fine. We are going to keep pumping out content on YouTube. We will always be available on Twitter. We'll always answer questions. We are not trying to exclude anyone from anything. We just want to keep rewarding the community that you guys have helped build up and that we feel so blessed to be a part of. And we're just going to keep on rolling with that sort of stuff and keep doing what we can. Rich, how are you feeling after that first kind of draft? You feeling like you're itching to get into more DraftKings drafts?
Yeah, absolutely. I need to go and re-download the DraftKings app because I deleted it at the end of the season, and let's start doing some best ball contests.
So if you're here, if you've been here, we really do appreciate you. Just want to say shout out to everybody who's subscribed. You guys, honestly, it's made our week hitting 1,000 subscribers way before, we got to training camp. Shout out to Tarek, Jordan, to Anthony, Chris in the chat, Jack in the chat, James, Felix, Jordan, everybody. If you've been here, we really, truly appreciate you. We will have some Dynasty content coming out on the site either tomorrow or the day after. We'll be back for another best ball show next week. Got some big guests lined up for July. Just going to keep on rolling. And before you know it, we're going to be deep into training camp. See you later, everyone.